It's Ollie.
Angie.
Engine and we're
PodCASt.
Go.
Hi guys.
Hi.
Hi. Well, it's good to be back, isn't it? So no, this is just our second episode, so we're still kind of adjusting to it, adjusting to being a podcast and stuff. But recently we had Racial Harmony Day or RHD. That was really fun. How did you guys enjoy that?
Anybody dress up?
Anybody can answer the question, guys. Don't worry, it's not a loaded question.
Actually, I guess it's so fun to wear your baju kurung to school.
Yeah, I feel like I like how liberating RHD is. You know, how everybody can just dress up and like it's really fun and they can just really just show off their culture and like, the things that they wear for their
And everyone looks pretty in their outfits also.
Yeah.
Yeah, I like RHD. It's like a Chinese New Year, Deepavali, Hari Raya combined all in one. You know,
Yeah.
that's what's so fun about it.
What do y'all think of like the different RHD celebration this year? Because there was no like PSG involvement
Yeah,
and there was no like booths, you know. What do you guys think of that?
I
That was
think,
weird, man. Like, oh, yeah. You go.
just like, I feel like even though like last year like it was so exciting because of the food and everything, but even though we didn't have any of the food or whatever this year, like it was still like with the henna and everything, it was still very fun. And chapte especially, we played chapte in class.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Yeah, it was just like the care packages were really fun. I
Yeah.
feel like.
Yeah.
I'm glad they had the care packages. I think that like added a bit more stuff. Like give us some goodies. I think that's quite fun. Yeah.
Since
You were saying?
Yeah, man. No, like last year, like when you walked down the thing, you went to the basketball court. It was like all the little booths set up. It felt like a giant friendly market, and you could just go to different booths and like
Yeah.
get free food, you know.
Yeah.
But and the chapter and everything, it was fun, and the Chinese calligraphy. I'm not sure if that was it. Yeah, but it was really fun. And this year, I feel like like a whole chunk of it was taken out, but you know, people still like kept the spirit, you know, that gotong royong. And I mean, I didn't get to play the chapter. I didn't use the henna at all. I mean, I used it the day before we were supposed to use it, but I don't know, like though the physical thing was gone, the essence was still there, and that's good.
Yeah.
And everyone dressed up, so that's good.
Yeah. Mhm.
Yeah. I
How
really
about
like the
videos?
programs.
Yeah. how about the video?
What programs?
The video was
Pretty applause was good.
Which cast is that?
pity applause. Yeah. So it was like such a fun video to film, but it was also like we had to really think about what we wanted to film. You know what I mean? It was a very fun video to film, and it was like we really had to think about what we wanted to talk about, because like as much as like we acknowledge the racial harmony in Singapore, and we feel like we really made like significant progress in terms of like how far we've come in terms of integration and everything, we still felt like we had to acknowledge also like some of the things that we still needed to improve in our society, despite already being at such a high level of racial harmony. So that was how we kind of went about doing the video.
Yeah, and I feel like with social media and everything, I think a lot of people are a lot more aware about how you say issues like racism and prejudice. Because you know it's just a lot more easier to access people's stories and their experiences and what they have to say. So I think you know bringing this about during Racial Harmony Day, which is sort of a commemoration of Singapore's racial harmony and commemoration of like even though of the contentious times that we used to have in the past and how we overcame that. I think it's good that we remind each other and remind ourselves that um, even though Singapore has come really far, there's still many ways we can improve, and racism will always be there, and so we should always like take the time and take the effort to make sure it doesn't get out of hand.
And I feel like also recently I've been seeing like a lot of content on social media about the Black Lives Matter movement. And I feel like we can kind of draw a link between that and Singapore. Because like although the movement has really highlighted like police brutality in America, it's also brought about like conversations about microaggressions, you know? And it's like even though like the deaths of some of these Black people show how police brutality has really affected the lives of African Americans in America, it's also like on a daily basis, they have to experience microaggressions, and they have to like deal with very small acts of racism that, like, even though it doesn't like have a very immediate significant impact on their lives, it can like it tends to add up. You know what I
Yeah.
mean?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Like some microaggressions really is just like asking like a black person like, oh, do you live in this building, or questioning whether like they have the right to be somewhere. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Yeah. And it's like,
I think even in Singapore, like it. I mean, I feel like this Black Lives Matter movement like really brought light to how it's not just in America, but also like this whole discrimination against like darker skin or minority people. They all it's like universal. So like even in Singapore, like we may not experience police brutality to that extent, but like also you cannot deny that there is like minorities suffer from like microaggressions.
yeah,
And yeah, do you all have any like experiences that you want to share?
I think like personally, right, like, so I'm Malay and Pakistani, for anyone watching who doesn't know, but not to be narcissistic or anything. It's this whole idea that people don't think that I'm from Singapore.
Yes, I got it too.
Don't really think that I'm from Singapore. So it's like every time like a discussion about like race comes up, I tend to realize that like, because people always ask me like, you're not from Singapore, right? Like, because of their preconceived notion of my race, I don't fully experience like the kind of microaggressions and like the issues that Malay people face on a daily basis. You know what I mean? Like, Ali, I don't know if you can relate to that.
I mean, I can only relate to the part of people assuming that I'm a foreigner, but I don't really blame them for that. I mean, I don't really look so typically Singaporean. So, and usually I after being asked that so many times, like, oh, so where you from? Oh, so where you from? It's like, to me, it doesn't really bother me. I just sort of like I just sort of mention it. I just mention, oh, I got ping IC lah. You know what I mean? Then they laugh, you know, and stuff like that because I like, bring up some super English accent. And so I think there are ways to get around it. But with that said, I don't think my experiences are as bad as some other people's experiences can be. Um, so
I think like on that notion, like it's easy to categorize people. Like
Yeah.
Mhm.
We recently found out that Sinjin here isn't completely 100% Chinese or something.
Yeah, okay. Right before this, Aaron was talking about who was Chinese in our group, and I actually said I'm Eurasian. Well, it's a big thing. Plus, if you don't know, my full name is Saint John Vortimer Smith. It's true. It's
it's not
true.
a Chinese name, by the way, if you guys can't tell. It's not a Chinese name.
Yeah. Look at that.
Oh my god, it's your year one picture.
Oh my god.
So I've got Sri Lankan, I've got Liverpool, I've got Irish, I've got my mom is Chinese, yeah, in my blood. So it's a big mix. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, this just shows how diverse Singapore is in a way. I mean, the fact that there's so many different people from so many different backgrounds, people who are not only just Indian, Chinese, or Malay, but also like mixed as well. I think it just shows that how diverse Singapore is and how, despite all this, we can all play the same game being Singaporean. So I think that's
Yeah.
something that's really great. It's something that Singapore has done very well.
I feel like your identity as a Singaporean, like, one thing that we should all kind of take pride in is the fact that like we are Singaporean in a way.
Mhm.
You get what I mean? It's like we're all of like such different races and such like different playing fields, but at the end of the day, if we all kind of like work together and start to like see people for who they are, not for what their race is, or to account for the injustices done to their race and to kind of alleviate those inequalities and that discrimination, we can all find like a shared identity as a Singaporean, if you know what I mean.
Totally.
Dude, we could quote that.
Yeah, I agree with Arif. I feel like as youth in Singapore, we need to learn to see past racial harmony as merely just trying to like keep peace or stay silent when those we care about use like racist rhetoric or stereotypes, you know. Not being aware doesn't make you any less of a individual in this society.
Yeah,
Mhm.
definitely.
I think also like if you have any like questions about the culture or the race, then you shouldn't like be shy. You should ask because it's better. Because like you know, there's so many terms like being woke and then being like politically correct, and like
Mm-hmm.
these words, they're all like they're so they're thrown around so easily, and so I think that like it's it's the most important thing is just to ask and then like to listen, you know, that kind of stuff. Yeah.
It's like this whole idea of woke culture has kind of
Mm-hmm.
made it so that like you cannot stay like you can see it like one of the benefits you can see is that you cannot stay unaware in a society now, but it also has created this kind of atmosphere of like, oh, if you're unaware, you're uneducated, then you're part of the problem. Okay, so woke culture as a whole, on one end you can see it as it's not justifiable to be unaware about social issues in society. But on the other spectrum, which is like a very inherent part of woke culture, is that like it cultivates this kind of atmosphere of like if you're unaware, then you're part of the problem. When in reality, it should be that if you're unaware, then you should be given the opportunity to learn, and the people around you should give you that opportunity and should give you that connection to learn with them. Because everything is a learning process, right? Especially like with like issues surrounding race, gender, violence,
Mm-hmm.
everything.
The part that we shouldn't like criticize someone for not being educated about it, because anyone with a neutral opinion, someone who's like just hearing about it, he might have like the wrong opinion, and like
Mm-hmm.
current woke culture might try to like attack that person, but definitely the society or whoever's with them should try to help them, you know, try to help them understand. But the thing is, it's only criticizable when they stick with their opinion. I think like when someone's in the wrong, and someone tells them that they're wrong, they you can not criticize them if they decide to change, you know,
Yeah,
and they know what's better, and they see what's wrong with it.
yeah. I feel like I had a conversation about this like the other day about how like my friend was talking about how she had a neutral opinion on like certain issues. And then afterwards, when she was telling me why she was neutral, the main like thing that she was talking about was about how like her opinion stayed neutral because she felt like she didn't really have the opportunity to be so ambitious about her,
Mm-hmm.
or she felt like she was being like once her opinions were ambitious, they were called into question by other like differing opinions. So then what we discussed about was that for a lot of minority groups, especially like the privilege of being like neutral, a lot of the times isn't there. Because a lot of the times like you have to have an opinion on certain things that affect your race and that kind of contribute to like the injustices done against your race. That's why it's very hard to be neutral about your opinions. And then
Mm-hmm.
she kind of understood that it's not because people are being like ambitious about their opinions so that they can follow a trend or something. It's because like they have to be. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So it's
Yeah.
about so the idea of being ambitious about your opinions is all about understanding where a person is coming from. You know,
Yeah.
fully
Yeah.
understand how they justify their opinions and how where their reasonings come about. Yeah, and also understanding why some people can be neutral.
Yeah. I think
Mm-hmm.
also like especially if you aren't educated about it, about this issue, or like you aren't like in a very polarizing position, it should be okay. I think it's okay to say that you're not educated about this issue. Like you don't automatically have to take a stance on what you think is right, but more like you are open to seeing, to taking a step back and then like observing, you know, what is going on instead of like immediately like having to um like campaign for a certain position, you know, because like if you do that, then what can happen is that you on like your social media platforms you like tell people the wrong things, or like people can misinterpret what you're saying, you know.
Yeah,
Yeah, I feel like it happens a lot with like people when you're on social media, like, and you share stuff, you can people always like misinterpret what you are trying to say, you know.
Yeah. And it's like, it's all about that culture of support, because it's like a lot of people tend to get their opinions from being like, from like looking at trends and looking like what's most popular in the media, especially those people who are afraid of asking about these issues because they feel like they're going to be like condemned for being uneducated about them.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like if you want to learn about social issues and you want to learn about, if you want to learn about social issues and topics of racism or topics of multiculturalism or diversity and such, I think it's really important that you approach these things with an open mind and understand both perspectives, understand different perspectives, but take each one with a pinch of salt and just kind of like understand it, but don't look at it as if it's like written in stone. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Always feel like, I guess what I would say is, if you want to know about something, if you care about something, let it come from your heart in a way. If don't try to force it in too much, and you should know about these things, but you don't have to feel so morally obligated to have a very, very strong opinion about them.
And adding on to like, I feel like we have quite a supportive community, so you don't have to be afraid to not know. You should be open to like learning, and from both like perspectives, whether or not you're like more educated in some aspects, it's important to note that casual comments sometimes are not there for the intent, for the insult. You know, we really have to relook at our mindset, because if we don't take the opportunity to educate others and to let them learn from what possibly like went wrong, it will just reinforce this unconscious bias, which might morph into more dire consequences. So it's crucial to identify such situations. Yeah.
I think that was one of the main points that we tried to raise up in the pity applause video, was about how like initially like there were a lot of questions that you kind of like, there were a lot of gray area questions like, do all Indians poke during Thaipusam? Do all Muslim, is it offensive to eat in front of your Muslim friends? And these are kind of questions that like we acknowledge that it's kind of hard for people to ask because they feel like they are being racist about it. When in reality, like, if you're in with your questions, if your intention is to learn and you have no like ill intentions and you have no like ulterior motives for asking a question, then you should feel free to ask it, because you should understand that you and the person both understand where you're coming from, which is a place of wanting to be educated.
Yeah, and I think that if you're gonna ask somebody something and you're worried about coming off as ignorant, just acknowledge it. Just say like, hey, I want to ask this because because I just really want to know, and I don't mean to come off as rude, and I just really would like to know this thing. I think just being clear with what you're saying and being communicative, I think will really, really help. You know, yeah. But either way, I'd like to just reiterate that in light of Racial Harmony Day, I just like to say I think as Singaporeans, I think we've gone very, very far. I think Racial Harmony Day is a great thing. And I think as a school community, Racial Harmony Day, of course, is very, very fun as well. It's like something that where everybody can gather up and dress up. And like I said, it feels like a combination of so many different festive celebrations all in one and all in one school. I think it's really, really great that we have that. And so Singapore has come very far, but it's good that the youth, especially on social media, or through social media, are kind of talking about these other issues that may appear in Singapore. And I think it's good that we're talking about this, that we should take a step further and we shouldn't ignore casual racism or ignore prejudices, because these things can really morph into really, really big issues, like issues that we see in the US sometimes. So small things shouldn't ignore them, because they can slowly build up like a snowball, like the snowball effect. It can really, really get big, and then they can be very devastating. So as long as we keep ourselves educated and keep aware of things and keep open towards one another, we can continue to be Singaporeans that will strive to prosper peacefully.
Singapore.
Yes.
One nation, one Singapore.
Singapore.
Yeah, our,
NDP.
we're really getting
Oh
ready
yeah,
for
NDP is coming up.
NDP.
Yeah.
NDP is
Yeah.
coming up. Yeah.
August, right? When's August?
August 9th.
Yeah.
August, right? We've been here for 7 years. And now you ask if it's in August.
Anyway, maybe we could have in the future we could have an NDP themed episode. How does that sound, guys?
Rank and
Rank
we'll put,
NDP.
Yes. Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
what are we even gonna talk about?
We'll discuss that in our team meetup.
Bullying.
Yeah, production meetup.
Yeah.
Anyway, I think that about wraps it up. Anything else you guys like to say? Any final word? Any final thoughts? I hope you
Yes.
guys. I don't know when this is gonna come out, but I hope you guys are having or have had or is going to have a very good 1 week break. Yeah.
Yeah.
Every-
Yeah.
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 You.
Bye.
All right. Bye, guys.
Bye.
Bye.
Follow us at PodCAst. Is there anything else?
Oh, Sota. Follow us.
Yes, and please follow our Instagram as well.
Yeah.
And read
Yeah, again.
the-
Bye.
Bye.
Yeah.
Bye.